This is Val Campbell, and I say hi to you from Ocean Shores, Washington. This is my first chapter, and we will be putting this on our new podcast as the initial offering of the first chapter podcast. And I will let you know that you can find us also on our website, vscampbell.com, and on YouTube, which is probably where you're watching this. And pretty much everywhere. I mean, Ems, my wife, is our producer director of this podcast, as well as our author podcasts and offerings. And so, as I said, we are at Ocean Shores. This is an annual pilgrimage for us. This time, it's the first time we brought our fifth wheel down, and we are getting it all ready so that we can use it as our studio on the road. And we plan on taking our podcasts and broadcasts with us as we travel around to different places, and we can share some of that with you in different venues. And as you can see, I have my new annual hoodie from Ocean Shores, Washington. And this one says, off duty, save yourself, which suits my personality, I think. So we are live in a non-studio, as you can see, so you'll probably hear dogs barking and trucks going back and forth. We're in an RV park. I wanted to take a few minutes and just explain to you some of my background so that you can put that in reference, and then I'll read a little bit of the first chapter of Operation Austin, which is the first book I wrote. I've finished 9, published 9, and most of those in a series about Gary Booker and his adventures. But some of them are spin-off books that then they go off and then they come back in. They're all, in a sequence on the series. I spent much of my career in the construction industry, doing a lot of project management and estimating. I've done about 20 startups and turnarounds. I've worked as a professional consultant in many different industries. Not all of my turnarounds have been in construction. I've done senior living turnarounds, RV park, manufacturing, marketing. I've built marketing teams all over the world for companies. 2 of the teams that I built, one was about 50,000 people in Southeast Asia. Another was 15,000 people, but that was in 50 countries. And where I had to design the communication systems and how to organize and manage people from all over the world that spoke all different languages, all different cultures, and yet getting those people to work together and providing them with resources. So I've got a diverse background. At one point in time, I was doing internet marketing, and I had 7 virtual box computers inside one of my computers, all using different IP addresses all over the United States, where I was working in different markets. I've done many turnarounds and startups, some for myself, some as an employee for other companies that would hire me to come in and do a turnaround of a division, some as a consultant. And partway through that process, I was asked to join a big consulting company. It was, I think, the premier consulting company on the West Coast. I had actually used them in 3 different organizations as a resource that I was doing turnarounds in. And then they came to me and said, hey, you're pretty good at this. Why don't you join us? So I started doing some checking around and did not join them. I joined a spinoff of them and worked as a consultant with that group for a while, and then left there eventually and did more on my own. And as part of that, I was doing technical consulting in the construction industry around life safety and building structures, part of the building code. And I got asked to do or to join a task force for the Attorney General's office, investigating corruption between the construction industry and government. And in fact, one of the high schools that we investigated was right down here in Ocean Shores. A very frustrating process because we went through hospitals and schools, and we were able to clearly identify fraudulent behavior on the part of a lot of very big general contractors. And in the end, when we went back to the legislature and sought funding for prosecution, the bad guys went to the politicians and gave them money, and the politicians shut the whole investigation down, and that was it. The bad guys win. On his business cards, it says Gary P. Booker Jr., Booker Security Consulting, but he rarely hands one out. Most people who contact him either know who he is or are blindly reaching out through a secured channel, having heard there might be someone on the other end who would help them in a desperate hour of need. He often wondered why he even had business cards, an analog remnant in a digital world. But on that rare occasion, handing one out gave the appearance of legitimacy. The term cybersecurity consultant made his work sound very neat and tidy, and it usually was, but other times it got really messy. That's what this story is about, a time when things got really messy. It was a Monday night in the middle of July. The temperature in eastern Washington had been characteristically hot, hovering around 100 degrees most days. Gary did not mind. He had air conditioning, although he didn't like to use it. Rather, he preferred wearing fewer clothes with quick dips in his pool. Since he lived alone most of the time, he had little need for clothes, unless his teammates, his housekeeper, or her 17-year-old daughter were around. Lately, he spent a lot of time alone. Technically, he didn't live alone, but his dog Jax didn't care if Gary worked nearly naked or not. He was up late into the evening, digging through an Asian chat room on the dark web, the real name of which is Tor, or the Onion Router. The system has many different uses, actually, but it was popularly known for being the secure place criminals use to communicate. Referring to it as the dark web was sensational, and the media loves to sensationalize things. Besides, nobody wants to hear about some technical process of encrypting messages in layers, especially with a boring name like the Onion Router. The dark web sounds much more mysterious and dangerous. He'd been monitoring a situation in Davao City on the Philippine island of Mindanao. There had been some mention of possible terrorist activity in a dark group he surfed occasionally. That was enough to send him digging through the notorious online back alley of society looking for clarity on the matter. The Philippines is 15 or 16 hours ahead of his local time zone, depending on daylight savings time. That was why he was up in the middle of the night, naked on a warm summer evening. Normally he would be in bed trying to outsnore his dog, which would be laying on a big pillow in the corner of the room. The phone rang, breaking his concentration. Irritated, someone would call at this hour, he looked to see who it was. The screen simply said, John. Calling unexpectedly was not unusual for his best friend. If he and Layla were not actually in Ellensburg with Gary, they might be anywhere in the world. When that was the case, John frequently poked his head above ground, wanting to chat. He normally did not call at 11 p.m., though. Curious about the call at that hour, Gary picked up his phone and touched the button. Hey, Big John, what's up? You okay? Yeah, boy, all good now. But I have a situation and I need your help. Now, Gary had known John Byrne for years. He was one of those hard-to-describe people. The closest comparison Gary could think of was Stallone's character in Get Carter. Gary often wondered if that character had actually been modeled after John's notorious career as an enforcer and collector for the casino industry. John would not stick out in any crowd, but when an immediate, lasting impression needed to be made on someone, he was the man many powerful people called. People knew him said John was the most interesting person they'd ever met. A very common comment about him was, somebody should write a book about all of his stuff, all of the stuff he's done, but nobody would believe it was true. John and Gary, along with John's team of hand-picked mercenaries, collected intelligence for governments, provided security for wealthy clients, performed hostage extractions, and handled special situations where criminals needed to be dealt with efficiently and permanently. They were not in the law enforcement business. They leave those cases to the authorities. But those same authorities often called John or Gary when they needed permanent resolution on cases they could not or would not touch. John and Gary were in the justice business, and right at the moment, John was on the phone and Gary was curious why. "Must be serious. How can I help?" Gary asked. "I'm in Las Vegas on a deal. It's cleaned up, but we had to bring out an 18-year-old girl. Her name's Paige. Things got complicated, Gary. I couldn't leave her there. She doesn't have any family, and I need to find a place for her to stay, someplace safe and quiet. Can you take her in for a while?" Normally, when they made victim extraction, it was for a client, and they knew where the kid was going. It was usually a girl, but occasionally a boy. Now John had a girl on his hands, and for some reason, there were no open arms to receive her and take her home. Gary and John usually worked together on those deals. This must have come together rather fast because this was the first Gary had heard of it. He wondered where the intel came from. Not that John had to report to Gary, but it seemed odd he'd not heard about it before this call. Gary had plenty of room. He lived alone in an enormous house near a small town in eastern Washington. Since he was usually up to his eyebrows in some cyber investigation, it was quiet around the place. But he was not sure about taking in some problem child. After a few years of drama and adventure, his life was finally organized with a routine he was very much in control of. Their work involved extremely sensitive security, another reason not to have strangers around. But it was John, so that's why Gary took the call. "Is she on drugs? What's wrong with her? Can't she go to a shelter or something?" "No," John said. She's been beaten up some. I was hired to recover a different girl from traffickers, and she was in the house. She's clean as far as I can tell, no tracks, and she doesn't seem the type. She was drugged up at a party last weekend and ended up in a bedroom in the same house as my client's kid. She just arrived in town from Idaho and wasn't on the site long. She's new here and doesn't have any place safe to go. I couldn't leave her there. Besides, it seems like there was a fire after we left. Devastating fire. The place burned to the ground. The other girl's back back with her family, but this kid needs someplace to go for a while, someplace nobody can find her if they come looking." "Are they looking?" "Not that I know of," John said, "but I'm not sure who knew about her, and eventually someone will sort this out. If the cops get a hold of her, the perps will find her soon after. She doesn't know anything, and she can't identify anyone important, but they won't care about that. They need to think she died in the fire. If we don't get her out of here, she's a dead girl, and she seems like a nice kid." "There was a fire, huh? Strange coincidence." "Yeah, boy, really sad. It was a beautiful place. Horrible fire. Really hot one from what I heard. Probably completely burned the bodies that we left there." The fact this conversation had gone from "I have a problem" to "we need to get her out of here" was not lost on Gary. He smiled. John knew he was a sucker for damsels in distress. It was what they did. "Where's she now?" he asked. "In my bedroom, sleeping." That would be the Rio, Gary thought, their favorite off-the-strip hotel. "Okay," Gary was looking for the punchline. "Tell me again why she can't stay at your place. I mean, just out of curiosity." "Well," John clarified, "Layla isn't really big on me bringing home beautiful girls. Besides, I'm not heading back. I'm flying out in the morning for Mexico." He added, "She was going to come down with us, but the upcoming event for Wallace and Suzanne has her tied up. So Rob, Layla, Paula, and I are going to Rio on a bodyguard gig. Besides, I'm not exactly the safest guy to be around right now, and I need to clear out. You're boring. You have a big place, a pool, and Paula's not there working right now. You need some company. She'll be safe with you." "Beautiful, you say?" Not that it made any difference, but John wouldn't usually comment on it. John says, "Did I say beautiful? I meant fucking gorgeous." Gary thought for a minute. Sarcastically, he thought it would be a real hardship having a beautiful guest for a few days, but he would suffer through it. Well, this concludes my reading time, and I thank you so much for allowing me to share a little bit of my first book, Operation Austin. I have completed 9 novels. They're all available on Amazon. You can just look for VS Campbell and or Gary Booker novels. You can also check us on our website, vscampbell.com. We're on Amazon we're on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. you'll be able to find us pretty easily, especially if you just go to our website, www.vscampbell.com. You will be able to find links to us everywhere. And with that, I thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you again, and we hope you enjoy the adventure.